Last week on Weapon History, we took a look at the French Lebel rifle, one of the new weapons that's made its way into Battlefield 1 with the first DLC. This week though, we're changing the pace, dropping into the support class and picking up a machine gun. Used in limited quantities by the Germans, and an important weapon in their lineup between rifles and the heavier placement machine guns. This week on Battlefield 1 Weapon History, we're taking a look at the MG15 n.A. And just before we get into the history, as always, we need to take a look at this weapon in Battlefield 1. The MG15 n.A is a support class weapon coming in 3 different variants. We've got the low weight, the storm, and the suppressive. The low weight variant is unlocked at support rank 1, the storm at rank 2, the suppressor at rank 3, and each of them costs 200 war bonds for you to use. The low weight version comes with a bipod for mounting on cover or for use while you're in prone, and it recovers from recoil and bullet spread faster than the other 2 variants. The storm variant comes with a foregrip for better recoil control, but it lacks that bipod, meaning this one is more suited to an on-the-move playstyle. And the suppressive comes with an optic sight, a bipod, and double the ammunition in a box compared to the other 2 variants. 200 rounds instead of 100. This variant gives you a much better view of what's going on if you're bipoded and firing bullets downrange. Of the 3 variants, I do prefer the Storm simply because my playstyle is much more mobile, and having that foregrip attached means I can keep the recoil under control a little bit more, but ultimately the suppressive variant is perhaps the one that most players will be interested in. The MG15 is one of the heavier options available in the support class, and it can be directly compared to the Lewis gun. In many respects, you might think the MG15 is simply a better option overall. It's got a higher starting ammo count, 100 on the low weight version, compared to just the 47 on the Lewis gun, a slightly higher rate of fire, and a faster bullet velocity, which incidentally is the second fastest in the game, just behind the Gewehr 98. But when you look a little bit deeper, the Lewis gun starts to shine a hell of a lot brighter. Across the board, the Lewis gun has less recoil, a lower first shot recoil multiplier, lower hipfire spread, and lower spread whilst aimed and moving around, and it can reload faster as well. Everyone assumes the Lewis gun is, well, a bit rubbish, but it has a lot more going for it when you stick it next to its direct competitor. That said, the MG15 is still a very effective weapon when you use it in the right way. And if you're a player who likes to defend more than they like to attack, or perhaps provide proper support to their teammates rather than being at the front of the pack, this gun will reward you immensely. That bullet velocity means pretty much as soon as you see someone in front of you and you start firing at them, the bullets have travelled and met them. Good, steady aim is key to success here, and of course the longer you hold down the trigger, the more accurate the weapon becomes, just like all other machine guns in the game. Every gun in Battlefield 1 has this sweet spot for usability, an area or a zone where it is just absolutely awesome. You just need to know what that area is, and then start to use it in the right way, and you will succeed. But is the weapon in Battlefield 1 anything like its real-life counterpart? Have DICE portrayed the MG15 as it was used during the war, or are we seeing some creative license being used here to make the weapon more competitive and fun to use? Let's find out. The BERGMANN MG15 was developed in Germany in 1910 by Theodor Bergmann and Louis Schmeisser. The original model was a water-cooled machine gun designed to be used on the ground, mounted on a bipod, and operated by more than one soldier. It featured spade handles, fired at 500 rounds a minute, and it accepted box magazines feeding up to 200 rounds at any one time. That's not what you see in Battlefield 1 at all. There's more to the MG15 than meets the eye. What I just described to you is now known as the MG15 AA, or Alter Art, meaning old model. After the need arose for a lighter, handheld machine gun grew within the fighting armies on the several fronts during World War I, lots of changes were made to its design. The water-cooled barrel jacket was removed and it was replaced with a perforated one, moving the weapon to air cooling. The bolt was replaced with a lighter alternative, and the fire rate was increased from 500 to 800 rounds a minute. And at the same time as it being adapted for infantry use, it was also starting to be fitted to certain German aircraft. Now, if it was fitted to a German aircraft, the spade handles from the original model stayed on the weapon. But for infantry use on the ground, a pistol grip and a trigger group was adopted, and a buttstock was fitted to the end of the weapon. The barrel jacket was further reduced in weight as well, with a bipod being added halfway down that barrel. All of these improvements suited the weapon more to ground use that the German army desperately needed. But the weapon wasn't totally reliable. The bolt had stoppage issues at its high fire rate of 800 rounds a minute, and the weapon tended to overheat quite quickly due to that speed. All of this is still within the realm of the Alter Art version, the AA or old model, so that's still not what's represented in Battlefield 1, and the weapon underwent even further changes, this time being extremely significant when you compare it to other German weapons of the time. Whilst Germany were looking for an answer to the gap in their weapons arsenal, they were using their limited supply of Masson machine guns imported from Denmark, and in many cases they were using captured weapons from previous battles. The British Lewis gun was almost exactly the kind of weapon that the Germans needed, and at the Battle of the Somme they didn't really have an answer for it. During 1916, however, the MG15 underwent those significant changes that I mentioned earlier, and it was made available as the NA, Neue Art, or New Model. The changes were mirrored off the development at the time of the Maxim MG0815. This is the machine gun that the Sentry uses in Battlefield 1. The new model was adapted to allow the Maxim's swivel-mounted bipod to be fitted, which was then relocated from the far too fragile barrel jacket to just in front of the pistol grip. The bolt was slowed down to its older fire rate of 500 rounds a minute, and that was to mitigate those stoppages and frequent overheating issues. A new carry handle was added, and new sights were fitted onto the weapon as well. This mirrored development meant the weapon was cheaper to produce, and it could use supplies that had already been made for the new Maxim machine gun. After the Battle of the Somme, the Germans ordered 6,000 MG15 n.A.s, and these were handed out to the Musketon infantry battalions to be used, whilst other soldiers were given proper training on how to fire that new Maxim gun. Most of those 6,000 MG15s made it over to the eastern side of the war. There's a few images floating around actually of Russian soldiers firing them. Presumably they were captured from the Germans during a battle over on the Eastern Front. And because the Maxim MG08 was soon put into combat, use of the MG15 weapon never really went much further. In 1919, the weapon's production was stopped completely due to the Treaty of Versailles being signed by the Germans, and as time passed towards World War II, the weapon was ultimately forgotten about. The name MG15, however, was used again in World War II. There's an image of the MG15 gun from that war here on the screen for you now, and you can see the resemblance in the designs, but the weapons were totally unrelated. So to be honest, the representation of the MG15 n.A. in Battlefield 1 isn't far from what it was in World War I. Earlier versions of the weapon were ignored, and this later design fits almost perfectly into the meta of the game. It's a handheld, lightweight machine gun that combats the Lewis gun. DICE, I think, did very well here. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something today. Leave me all your comments below. Let me know what you think about the MG15 in Battlefield 1. And also, let me know what weapon you'd like to see next week featured on Battlefield 1 Weapon History. But until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.